I'm Samantha Peterson, 32, and I realized I was in labor when I felt the first sharp contraction while alone in our suburban home. After 5 years of marriage to Jason, I never imagined I'd be frantically calling him with no answer as my contractions intensified. Our relationship had been good once, and surprisingly, so had my connection with my mother-in-law Grace. But in the months leading up to this moment, things had gotten weird with both of them. Despite everything, I was still excited about our baby. As another contraction hit harder, I called Jason again, praying he'd pick up this time. Before I dive into the story that changed everything, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever dealt with difficult in-laws. Trust me, this story might make yours look tame. I've always been the independent type. Working as an accountant gave me the stability I craved after losing both my parents in my early 20s. With no siblings and limited extended family, I built my life around close friends and my career. Deep down, though, I yearned for that family connection I'd lost too young. When I met Jason at my college friend's barbecue 7 years ago, I wasn't looking for love. He was tall with kind brown eyes, a software engineer who approached relationships with the same analytical mindset he used for coding problems. Where I was organized and practical, he was creative and spontaneous. We balanced each other perfectly. "You're different," he told me on our third date. "Most women find me too intense, too focused on details. You actually get me." Our whirlwind romance progressed quickly. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. I met his mother Grace about 2 months in, and initially, I was pleasantly surprised. As a widow who had raised Jason alone since he was 10, Grace seemed delighted that her son had found someone. "I've been waiting for him to bring home someone special," she told me during that first dinner at her house. "You're exactly what I hoped for in a daughter-in-law." Those words meant everything to me, having lost my own mother. Grace's maternal warmth filled a void I hadn't realized was still so raw. When Jason proposed after a year of dating, Grace was the first person he called after I said yes. She cried tears of joy over the phone, and I felt like I was gaining not just a husband but a mother too. Our wedding was beautiful, with Grace heavily involved in the planning. Looking back, I should have noticed how she gently steered decisions about flowers, menu choices, and seating arrangements. At the time, I appreciated her help and experience. She had excellent taste, and I wanted her to feel included since she was paying for a significant portion of the celebration. "We're going to be so happy together," Jason whispered as we shared our first dance. "You, me, and a house full of kids someday." The first 3 years of marriage were mostly wonderful. We bought a charming 4-bedroom home in a good school district, invested in our careers, and spent weekends on home improvement projects. We talked about starting a family soon, but agreed to establish ourselves professionally first. During those early years, the red flags were subtle. Jason called his mother daily, which seemed sweet initially. When we made major decisions like buying our house, he would run the details by Grace before we signed anything. If I questioned this, he'd say, "Mom has great instincts about these things. She just wants what's best for us." Grace lived only 15 minutes away and began stopping by unannounced. The first few times, I welcomed her visits. Then it became a regular occurrence. She'd show up during dinner or early on weekend mornings with breakfast surprises. "I was just in the neighborhood," became her standard explanation, though her house was in the opposite direction from anywhere she normally went. She began offering opinions on everything: our furniture, my cooking, even how I organized our kitchen cabinets. When I tried establishing some boundaries, Jason would shrug off my concerns. "That's just how she shows love," he'd say. "She's lonely since Dad died." When she rearranged our living room while we were at work because the energy flow was all wrong, I thanked her for thinking of us. But the incidents multiplied. Jason sided with his mother during small disagreements between us. If Grace criticized something about me, always framed as helpful advice, Jason would encourage me to consider her perspective. Still, I believed we had a solid foundation. When we decided to try for a baby after our 4th anniversary, I was hopeful this new chapter would strengthen our bond as a couple. Grace seemed thrilled at the prospect of becoming a grandmother, and I imagined us growing closer as she shared her maternal wisdom with me. "Mom's excited to be involved." When he opened it that evening, His face lit up with a smile that made all the anxious waiting worthwhile. "We're having a baby," he exclaimed, lifting me in a gentle hug. "I have to call Mom." Before I could suggest we savor the moment just between us for a day, he was dialing Grace's number and putting her on speakerphone. Her response was immediate and enthusiastic, but something in her tone caught my attention. "My grandbaby. Oh, my precious grandbaby is coming," she gushed. "Not congratulations to us, just immediate possession of a child that wasn't even visible on an ultrasound yet. Jason didn't notice. We just found out, Mom. Sam wanted to do this cute reveal with baby shoes." "That's nice, dear," Grace replied dismissively. "Now, have you thought about the nursery? The second bedroom gets the best morning light. But that office of yours would work too, Jason." That was the first major point of contention. I had assumed we'd convert our rarely used guest room into the nursery, keeping Jason's home office intact since he worked remotely 2 days a week. Grace had other ideas, arriving the very next weekend with paint swatches for Jason's office. "Mom thinks the office would make a better nursery," Jason informed me that Saturday morning as Grace spread color samples across his desk. "But we already discussed using the guest room," I reminded him. Grace looked up with a practiced sympathetic smile. "The guest room doesn't have the right energy for a baby, Samantha. Trust me on this." When I tried to reason with Jason privately, he sighed. "The pregnancy hormones are making you stubborn about this. Mom raised me, remember? She knows what she's doing." That comment stung. It was the first time he dismissed my feelings as pregnancy hormones, but certainly not the last. As the weeks progressed, my morning sickness hit hard. I was throwing up multiple times daily, struggling to keep down even water some days. My doctor prescribed medication and assured me this would likely pass after the first trimester. Grace had opinions about that too. Morning sickness is largely psychological, she told me when she found me hunched over the toilet one morning during another unannounced visit. When I was pregnant with Jason, I never had a day of nausea. I think women who expect to be sick manifest it. Jason was becoming increasingly distant. I'd wake up in the night to find him texting, the blue light illuminating his face. When I asked who he was messaging at 2 a.m., he'd say, "Just Mom. She's sending me ideas for the baby." I began finding evidence of Grace's presence in our home when neither of us had let her in. Baby books on the coffee table with her handwritten notes in the margins, nursery design printouts with her handwriting circling preferred options. When I confronted Jason about giving his mother a key without discussing it with me, he acted confused. "She's just trying to help, Sam. Why are you being so sensitive lately?" At 12 weeks, we had our first ultrasound. I wanted this moment to be intimate, just the two of us seeing our baby for the first time. Instead, I arrived at the appointment to find Grace sitting in the waiting room. "Surprise," Jason said, as if he'd done something wonderful. "Mom wanted to be here for this milestone." The technician, noting my dismay, gently suggested that only 2 people could be in the room due to space limitations. Before I could speak, visible in the dark circles under my eyes, "You're growing a human, Samantha," he reminded me during a check-in meeting. "Whatever's causing this stress isn't good for you or the baby." She barely looked up. "Jason asked me to work on the nursery plans while you were at work. Didn't he tell you? And I have a key, remember?" I hadn't remembered because Jason had never told me. That night, I had the first major fight of our marriage. When I brought up the boundary violation of giving his mother a key without telling me, Jason exploded. "You're being ridiculous. Mom is trying to help us, and you're acting like she's some kind of intruder. This is exactly why I didn't tell you about the key. I knew you'd overreact." He stormed out that night and didn't return my calls. I later learned he'd stayed at Grace's house, where they apparently had a long conversation about my pregnancy mood swings and ungratefulness. When he returned the next morning, his eyes were red from crying. He apologized for yelling, held me close, and promised to do better at balancing everyone's needs. But the core issue, his mother's intrusion into our lives and his enabling of it, remained unaddressed. "People might get the wrong idea," he said, with Grace nodding in agreement from her now regular spot at our dinner table. Slowly, I was being cut off from my support system, just when I needed it most. By the 6-month mark of my pregnancy, I had a noticeable bump and had started feeling the baby move regularly. Despite the growing tensions at home, these little flutters connected me to my child and gave me moments of pure joy amid the stress. We scheduled a small gender reveal gathering, just us, Grace, and 2 couples we were friends with. "Gertrude," Grace declared. "It's been the tradition for firstborn girls in our family for generations." I forced a smile. "That's something Jason and I will decide together." Grace's eyes narrowed slightly. "Family traditions matter, Samantha." Later that night, I found Jason and Grace huddled over a baby name book, with Grace systematically crossing out names she deemed too modern or lacking character. When I tried to join the conversation, suggesting names I'd been considering, Grace dismissed each one. "Lily? That sounds like a stripper name." She scoffed at my favorite. "This child will carry our family legacy." Jason, rather than supporting me, simply shrugged. "Mom has a point about traditional names having more substance." The nursery became another battleground. Despite having agreed on a subtle woodland theme with soft greens and yellows, I came home from work one day to find the walls painted pink with ballet motifs stenciled along the borders. "Surprise!" Grace exclaimed when I walked in, paint roller still in hand. I discovered my pregnancy journal, where I'd been recording my feelings and experiences to someday share with our daughter, had been moved from my bedside table. I found it in the living room, open. "I thought Jason should know you're writing such things." The financial control began subtly. Jason questioned purchases on our joint credit card, maternity clothes, nursery items I'd selected. "You know money's tight with the nursery renovations. We need to be more careful." Yet I noticed he never questioned the expensive baby furniture Grace had selected or the elaborate decorations she continued to add to the nursery without consultation. During a routine cleaning one weekend, I discovered that Grace had a key not just to our front door, but also to our back entrance and garage, keys I'd never seen before. When had Jason given her these? The thought of her having complete access to our home at any time sent shivers down my spine. The situation reached a breaking point when, at 7 months pregnant, I came home from a doctor's appointment to find Grace in our bedroom, washing and rearranging the baby clothes I'd carefully organized in the dresser. "These needed to be washed again with special detergent," she explained without looking up. "And the organization system you were using won't work for a busy new mother." I felt something snap inside me. "Grace, I need you to stop. These are my baby's clothes in my home, and I had already washed and organized them the way I wanted." She turned to me with a cold stare I'd never seen before. "Clearly, you don't understand what's best for a baby. It's fortunate Jason has me to correct these mistakes." When Jason came home and I explained what happened, rather than supporting me, he accused me of overreacting. "Mom texted me about this. She says you practically screamed at her over baby clothes. Sam, you need to get your emotions under control. The doctor said stress isn't good for the baby." "I didn't scream," I said, fighting back tears. "I just asked her to respect my decisions in my own home." Jason's expression hardened. "Our home. And Mom is family. She's allowed to help, especially when she has experience you don't." Megan insisted. "Start documenting everything. And maybe create an emergency fund he doesn't know about, just in case." I took her advice, setting aside small amounts from my personal account into a new savings account Jason couldn't access. When he discovered bank notifications on my phone 2 weeks later, he was furious. "You're hiding money from me? From our family? What else are you hiding?" The argument escalated until I was hyperventilating. That incident prompted my doctor to warn me about preeclampsia risks and the importance of reducing stress. When I explained some of what was happening at home, she looked concerned and offered resources for counseling. Before I could pursue counseling, however, I returned home from work to find Grace's suitcases in our hallway. "What's going on?" I asked Jason when he came in from the garage. "Mom's moving into the guest room for a while," he announced without meeting my eyes. "Just until after the baby comes. She can help with night feeding so you can recover." "We never discussed this," I said, my voice shaking. "Because I knew you'd react poorly," he replied. "It's already decided, Sam. Mom gave up her lease to help us. She'll be staying through the baby's first few months at least." Just like that, I became a guest in my own home. Jason spent evenings with her in the living room while I retreated to our bedroom, alone with my growing child in fears. And my next OB appointment, which I attended alone despite Jason's promises to be there, my doctor was alarmed by my weight loss and emotional state. "Samantha," she said gently, "I'm concerned about you. This level of stress and anxiety isn't normal, even for a first-time mom. Is there someone safe you can stay with if things at home don't improve?" Her question made everything suddenly, terrifyingly real. What kind of situation was I in if medical professionals were suggesting I might need to leave my own home? At 8.5 months pregnant, I waddled through my front door after a long day at work to find my bedroom completely different. The soothing blue walls I'd chosen were now a jarring yellow. Our bedding had been replaced with floral patterns I would never have selected. Even the curtains were new. "Do you like it?" Grace appeared in the doorway, beaming. "I thought a brighter color would help with your mood. Jason mentioned you've been quite negative lately." I stood speechless, one hand on my enormous belly, the other gripping the doorframe for support. "Where are my things?" I finally managed to ask. Grace waved dismissively. "I put your old bedding in storage. Too masculine for a pregnant woman." "Really?" And those heavy blue curtains were blocking healing sunlight. That night I discovered my carefully packed hospital bag had been unpacked, the contents redistributed. The comfortable nightgown I'd selected was gone, replaced with a frilly pink option with "New Mommy" emblazoned across the chest. Something Grace had purchased without telling me. "Where's my original hospital bag?" I asked Jason when he came to bed. He yawned, barely looking up from his phone. "Mom reorganized it. She said you'd packed all wrong, no nursing bras, no proper postpartum supplies. She fixed it for you." "Those items were all there," I insisted. "I researched everything I needed." "Well, Mom's actually had a baby," he replied coldly. "Her experience trumps your internet research." The next day, I overheard Grace and Jason in the kitchen, deep in conversation about the baby. "We'll need to set up a proper schedule once she's born," Grace was saying. "Samantha can handle the daytime feeding since she insists on breastfeeding, but I'll take the night shift with pumped milk or formula supplements." "Sounds reasonable," Jason agreed. "Sam needs to understand that accepting help doesn't make her a bad mother." About that, Grace's voice dropped lower, but I could still hear her from my position in the hallway. "I think the baby should call me Mama Grace from the start. It's less confusing than Grandma. And since I'll be her primary caregiver most of the time while Samantha works." I didn't hear Jason's response because blood was rushing in my ears. Primary caregiver? They were planning for Grace to raise my child while I worked? And have my daughter call her Mama? That afternoon, while Jason was in his office on a call, I confronted Grace directly. Grace's normally pleasant mask slipped, revealing a cold expression I'd glimpsed only in flashes before. "Let me explain something to you, Samantha," she said quietly. "Jason is my son. This baby is my granddaughter. You are merely the vessel delivering her to our family. I've been patient, hoping you'd understand your place, but clearly you need things spelled out." I stepped back, shocked by the venom in her voice. "Jason will always choose me," she continued. "He knows I only want what's best for him and the baby. You're a temporary disruption in our family, a mistake I'm graciously trying to fix." Jason walked in before I could respond, immediately sensing the tension. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us. Grace's expression instantly transformed into one of hurt confusion. "I was just telling Samantha how excited I am to help with the baby, and she became very aggressive, telling me I should go back to my own home." "That's not what happened," I protested. "She said I'm just a vessel for your baby, Jason. That I'm a mistake in your life she's trying to fix." Jason's face hardened as he looked at me. "That doesn't sound like something Mom would say. You're twisting her words because you're jealous of our relationship." "I'm not jealous. I'm concerned about how she's taking over our lives, our home, and now planning to take over raising our child." The argument escalated until I delivered an ultimatum through tears. "Either Grace finds somewhere else to stay, or I'm going to Megan's until the baby comes." Jason's response shattered any remaining illusion about where his loyalties lay. "If that's how you feel, Maybe you should go to Megan's. Mom is here to help us, and you're being completely unreasonable. I stood frozen, hand on my belly where our daughter was kicking furiously, as if sensing my distress. Had my husband just chosen his mother over his pregnant wife? In the end, I didn't go to Megan's. Jason apologized that evening, promising things would improve. He agreed to discuss Grace finding her own place after the baby was born, and assured me no decisions about childcare would be made without my input. But actions speak louder than words. Nothing changed except that Grace became more subtle in her manipulations. She would wait until Jason was present to make suggestions about the baby, ensuring she had his support before I could object. I began preparing for birth alone, taking online classes at night when they thought I was sleeping. I spoke privately with my doctor about ensuring only approved people would be allowed in the delivery room, specifically excluding Grace. That's very common, my doctor assured me. Your comfort during labor is paramount. We'll make sure your wishes are respected. One evening, I overheard Jason and Grace discussing the delivery. The doctor mentioned only one support person in the room initially. Jason was saying, "That's ridiculous," Grace replied. "I've given birth. I know what she'll need better than she does. You tell them I'm coming in too." "I'll make sure you're there, Mom," Jason promised. Sam will be too focused on the labor to even notice. Their casual dismissal of my wishes for one of the most vulnerable moments of my life was the final confirmation that I needed to protect myself and my baby. A week before my due date, Grace accidentally knocked over the only photo I had of my parents holding me as a baby. The shattered glass seemed symbolic of what she'd done to my life. "These things happen," she said with a shrug when I discovered the broken frame. That night, I finalized plans to go to Megan's the following day while Jason and Grace were scheduled to be at a grandparenting class she'd signed up for. I packed essentials in my work bag, planning to tell them I was staying with my friend just for the final week before birth, to reduce household stress. But my daughter had other plans. The very next morning, after Jason and Grace left to shop for last-minute baby essentials, I felt the first contraction while folding laundry. The first contraction felt like an intense menstrual cramp, uncomfortable but manageable. I glanced at the clock, 10:17 a.m., when another one hit 12 minutes later. I started timing them with the contraction app I downloaded weeks ago. After an hour of increasingly regular contractions, I called Jason. No answer. I texted, "Having regular contractions. Please call me ASAP." No response. I tried not to panic. First labors typically take hours, sometimes even days. They were probably in a store with poor reception. I continued timing contractions while tidying up the nursery, my mind racing with contingency plans. By noon, the contractions were coming every 8 minutes and definitely intensifying. I called Jason again, then Grace. Neither answered. With growing anxiety, I called my friend Megan. "Hey Sam, what's up?" Her cheerful voice was instantly calming. "I think I'm in labor," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Jason's not answering, and the contractions are getting stronger." "I'm on my way," she said without hesitation. "Have you called your doctor?" "Hadn't." Still hoping Jason would return my calls first. After another painful contraction, I called the OB's office. The nurse told me to come in when contractions were 5 minutes apart. But given my situation, suggested I head to the hospital sooner rather than later. "Better to be there early than risk delivering in a car," she advised. By the time Megan arrived 30 minutes later, I was breathing through contractions that were now 6 minutes apart and definitely more painful. "Still no word from Jason?" she asked, helping me gather my hospital bag, the one I'd repacked secretly after Grace's improvements. I shook my head, making one last attempt to reach him. This time he answered on the 4th ring. "Sam? What's up? We're looking at baby monitors." "I'm in labor," I said, a contraction building as I spoke. "Regular contractions for over 2 hours now. Where are you?" There was a pause. Then I heard him relay the information to Grace. Her voice in the background sounded annoyed rather than concerned. "Are you sure it's real labor?" Jason asked. "Mom says first-time moms often mistake Braxton Hicks for actual labor." I breathed through the pain before answering. "Yes, I'm sure. Megan's here." She's taking me to the hospital. Megan? Why call her? The disapproval in his voice was clear. We'll head home now and take you ourselves. No time, I managed as another contraction built. Just meet us at the hospital. Fine. He said shortly. We need to finish up here first. Mom says we need to get the house ready before bringing home a newborn. The call ended before I could respond. Megan helped me to her car. My hospital bag over her shoulder. Did he seriously just prioritize shopping over your labor? She asked incredulously. I didn't have the energy to defend him. As Megan pulled out of the driveway, my water broke. A warm gush that soaked the towel I thankfully thought to sit on. Oh God, I gasped. My water just broke. Megan's eyes widened, but she remained calm. Okay, we're definitely going straight to the hospital. Hang in there, Sam. The contractions intensified dramatically after my water broke. By the time we reached the hospital 20 minutes later, they were coming every 4 minutes and taking my breath away. The check-in nurse helped me into a wheelchair while Megan parked the car. Is your husband coming? She asked, reviewing my birth plan. He's supposed to be, I said, fighting back tears of pain and disappointment. In the labor and delivery unit, a different nurse helped me change into a gown and checked my cervix. You're at 5 centimeters, she announced. Definitely in active labor. Is your support person here? My friend Megan brought me, I explained, gripping the bedrail as another contraction peaked. My husband is on his way. The nurse's expression was sympathetic but neutral. We'll get you settled. Did you want an epidural? I nodded, no longer concerned with my original plan for an unmedicated birth. Without Jason's support, I needed all the help I could get. After being admitted and settled in a labor room, I tried calling Jason again. This time, Grace answered his phone. Samantha, we're at your house getting things ready, she said briskly. Jason's setting up the bassinet in our room. We'll be there once we finish here, she said dismissively. First labors take forever. You have plenty of time. Hours passed. The epidural provided relief from the physical pain, but the emotional anguish of facing labor without my husband grew more acute. Megan stayed by my side, holding my hand through contractions, helping me change positions, and advocating with nurses when needed. By 6 p.m., I was 7 centimeters dilated, and there was still no sign of Jason. I called again during a brief break between contractions. Where are you? I demanded when he finally answered. We're still at home, he said, sounding distracted. Mom's preparing some special postpartum recovery meals for you to have at the hospital. He promised vaguely. Mom says first babies usually come after midnight anyway. By 8 p.m., labor had intensified despite the epidural. The nurse checked me again and announced I was fully dilated. Time to start pushing soon, she said, preparing the room. Is your husband here yet? I shook my head, unable to speak through tears. The nurse exchanged glances with Megan. I'll be her support person, Megan declared firmly. I'm not leaving her. During the transition phase, the most intense part of labor, I made one last desperate call to Jason. The baby is coming now, I said between pushes. Please, Jason. We're on our way, he said, finally sounding alarmed. We'll be there in 20 minutes. But our daughter couldn't wait. After 30 minutes of pushing, with Megan holding one leg and a nurse holding the other, Lily Grace Peterson entered the world at 9:17 p.m., weighing 7 pounds 3 ounces. The moment they placed her on my chest, wet and wailing, everything else faded away. Her perfect tiny features, her strong lungs, her delicate fingers wrapping around my pinky. Nothing else mattered in that moment. Jason and Grace arrived 45 minutes later, by which time Lily and I had already had our first nursing session and skin-to-skin bonding time. We missed it, Jason said, looking genuinely disappointed as he entered the room. Mom said we had plenty of time. Grace pushed past him, arms outstretched. Let me see my grandbaby. The nurse stepped between us protectively. Mom needs to rest now. You can have short visits, but we're limiting time with the new mother and baby. I silently thanked her for the intervention as I drifted into an exhausted sleep, Lily safely in the bassinet beside my bed. Megan stayed overnight in the uncomfortable hospital chair. refusing to leave me alone. When I woke to feed Lily in the early hours, she helped position the baby and brought me water. "I can't believe they didn't show up for her birth," she whispered, watching me nurse. "Sam, this isn't normal." "I know," I admitted for the first time. "I know it's not." The next morning, Jason arrived alone with a bouquet of flowers and a teddy bear. He seemed genuinely remorseful, kissing my forehead and staring in awe at our daughter. "She's perfect," he said, tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry I missed it, Sam. Mom was convinced we had more time, and I should have known better." I wanted to believe his apology was sincere. Perhaps seeing his daughter had shifted something in him. When discharge day arrived 2 days later, Jason came to bring us home, again without Grace. "Mom's at the house preparing everything," he explained, helping me into the wheelchair with Lily in my arms. The car ride home was tense. Jason attempted small talk about how cute Lily was, while I wondered what awaited me at home. "Mom reorganized the nursery again," he mentioned casually. "She read that the crib should face east for better baby sleep patterns." I said nothing, focusing on Lily's peaceful sleeping face instead. When we arrived home, Grace was waiting at the door, arms outstretched. "Give me my precious angel," she cooed, reaching for Lily before I'd even made it through the doorway. Exhausted and sore from childbirth, I couldn't prevent her from taking my newborn from my arms. Grace immediately turned away, cooing to Lily about how Mama Grace has everything ready for you. The nursery had indeed been completely transformed again, now with Grace's personal items scattered throughout. A daybed had been added where there had barely been room for a rocking chair. "Mom will be sleeping in here with the baby," Jason explained, misreading my shocked expression as gratitude. The argument that followed was interrupted by Lily's hungry cries. When I reached for her, Grace turned away. "I'll get her settled first," she insisted. "You should rest. She's hungry." "I need to feed her," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of fatigue and anger. "We have bottles prepared," Grace countered, nodding toward the kitchen. "I got the formula you'll need." "I'm breastfeeding," I reminded her, finally taking Lily from her reluctant arms. As her mother, that's my decision. Grace's disapproving look said everything. Grace had essentially moved in completely, taking over the kitchen, rearranging the living room to accommodate her favorite chair, and acting as gatekeeper to my own child. Whenever Lily cried, Grace would rush to pick her up before I could respond. If I was breastfeeding, Grace hovered nearby with critical comments about my technique or suggestions that the baby wasn't getting enough milk. "She's still crying because she's hungry," Grace would insist after a feeding. "Let me give her a formula supplement." When I refused, she would tell Jason I was starving the baby. He, exhausted from midnight diaper changes, the one parental task he'd taken on, usually sided with his mother. "Maybe Mom's right, Sam. You're tired and not thinking clearly." My postpartum checkup confirmed that Lily was gaining weight perfectly and my milk supply was excellent, but Grace dismissed medical confirmation as doctors not knowing everything. I discovered Grace going through my phone one morning while I was showering. My first shower in 3 days. When confronted, she claimed she was checking for important messages I might have missed. The most disturbing moment came when I overheard Grace and Jason talking in the kitchen late one night when they thought I was asleep. "I'm concerned about Samantha's behavior," Grace was saying quietly. "She seems resentful of the baby sometimes. Did you notice how she sighed when Lily needed another feeding? That's a red flag for postpartum depression." "What should we do?" Jason asked, his voice worried. "We need to document everything," Grace replied. "If her condition worsens, we may need to consider other arrangements for Lily's safety. As the father and grandmother, we have rights." I felt physically ill listening to them discuss potentially taking my child from me based on completely fabricated concerns. That night, I nursed Lily with tears streaming down my face, promising her I would never let anyone separate us. By the end of the second week, I was desperate for a brief escape. Lily was sleeping for a solid 2-hour stretch, Grace was napping, and Jason was working in his office. I decided to make a quick trip to the pharmacy for nipple cream and new nursing pads, items I genuinely needed. "I'm running to CVS," I told Jason, peering into his office. "Lily just ate and is sleeping. I'll be back in 20 minutes. He barely looked up from his computer. Fine. Mom's here if she wakes up. The brief outing felt like freedom. For 15 minutes. I was just a person in a pharmacy, not a battleground for control. I selected my items, added some chocolate as a small treat, and headed home feeling marginally more human. When I arrived home, my key wouldn't work in the front door. Thinking it was just stuck, I tried the back door. Same problem. Increasingly concerned, I knocked firmly, then rang the doorbell when there was no answer. I could see movement through the frosted glass panels beside the door. Someone was home but not answering. I called Jason's cell phone. No answer. I called our landline. No answer. Panic rising. I knocked harder, then began pounding on the door. Jason, I can see you in there. Open the door. After what felt like an eternity but was probably closer to 30 minutes, Jason finally opened the door looking annoyed. Where were you? We didn't hear you knocking. Why didn't my key work? I demanded, pushing past him into the house. Where's Lily? Mom's giving her a bath, he said casually. And I don't know about your key. Maybe you have the wrong one. Taking the baby towel from the counter. I told you I wasn't ready for sink baths yet. She had a diaper blowout, Grace said dismissively. And the baby tub is too awkward. This is how I bathed Jason. Too exhausted to argue, I focused on getting Lily dried, diapered, and dressed. It wasn't until later that evening that I discovered all my belongings had been moved to the guest room, the room that had originally been planned as the nursery. What's going on? I asked Jason, finding him arranging my clothes in the guest room dresser. Mom thought it would be better if you had your own space to recover, he explained without meeting my eyes. She'll help me with night duty for Lily in our room. So you're moving me out of our bedroom? Without discussing it with me. It's temporary, he insisted. Just until you're feeling more yourself. Mom's concerned about your emotional state. And the locks. I pressed. Did you change the locks on me too? Jason's uncomfortable expression confirmed my suspicion. It was a miscommunication. The locksmith came early, and Mom thought you knew about the appointment. Why would we need new locks at all? I demanded. Jason hesitated before answering. Mom was concerned about security with a newborn in the house. That night, after a bitter argument that ended with Jason sleeping in our bedroom with Lily's bassinet while I was exiled to the guest room, I used Jason's laptop to check our browsing history while he was showering. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Searches for signs of postpartum depression. Can fathers get full custody? And grandparents' rights in custody cases filled the recent history. They were planning to take my daughter from me. The revelation broke something in me but also crystallized my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting my daughter from the toxic dynamic that had destroyed my marriage. I called Megan from the bathroom, water running to mask my voice. I need a plan, I whispered. They're trying to build a case that I'm an unfit mother. Megan listened to everything then said firmly, You need to get out of there, Sam. Both of you. We developed a strategy. I would pretend to accept the new arrangement, acting defeated while secretly preparing to leave. Megan connected me with her cousin, an attorney specializing in family law, who agreed to speak with me confidentially. 2 days later I got my opportunity. Jason announced that he and Grace were going shopping for essential baby items that we somehow still needed despite the overflowing nursery. We'll be a few hours, Grace said, clearly pleased to have Jason to herself. Don't disturb the baby's nap schedule while we're gone. The moment their car left the driveway, I called the locksmith I contacted secretly the day before. He arrived within 30 minutes and changed all the locks, providing me with the only set of keys. While he worked, I gathered Grace's numerous belongings from throughout the house and placed them neatly in suitcases on the front porch. Not everything fit, but I managed to collect her essential items. After the locksmith left, I nursed Lily peacefully in the rocking chair, feeling in control of my home for the first time in months. When I heard Jason's car in the driveway, I took a deep breath and prepared for the confrontation. The confusion on their faces when their keys didn't work was visible through the window. Jason knocked. Why are Mom's things on the porch? I stood firmly in the doorway, not inviting them in. Jason, You are welcome to come inside. Our home is still your home. But Grace needs to find other accommodations. Grace pushed forward. This is ridiculous. Let me in this instant. No, I said simply. This is my home too. And I no longer consent to you living here. You can't do this, Jason sputtered. Mom has nowhere to go. She had her own apartment until she gave up the lease, without consulting us. I reminded him. She can stay in a hotel until she finds a new place. This is outrageous, Grace hissed. Jason, do something. Jason's face darkened. Give me the keys, Sam. Now. No. I repeated. You're welcome to come inside and be with your daughter and wife. But Grace stays elsewhere. That's non-negotiable. The scene that followed was ugly. Grace began crying dramatically on our front lawn, attracting the attention of neighbors. Jason threatened to call the police, but I calmly reminded him that I was a legal resident and had every right to change the locks on my own home. If you call the police, I added quietly, I'll show them the searches on your computer about taking custody from me. How do you think that will look? Eventually, Jason left with Grace, her suitcases loaded into his car. As they drove away, I closed and locked the door, then broke down in tears of relief and exhaustion, holding Lily close. The reprieve was short-lived. Jason's angry phone calls began almost immediately, alternating between threats and pleading. When he realized I wouldn't relent on Grace staying elsewhere, his tactics changed. Fine, he finally said. Mom will stay at a hotel. I'll be home tomorrow and we'll discuss this like adults. But the next morning, I discovered he had withdrawn nearly all the money from our joint savings account, funds we'd been saving for Lily's future, and my unpaid maternity leave. The account that had held over $15,000 now showed a balance of $237. Two could play at that game. I immediately called the bank and froze our joint checking account and credit cards. Then I transferred my next paycheck, which was directly deposited to my private emergency account. When Jason discovered what I'd done, his rage reached new heights. You're ruining everything, he shouted during his next visit. Mom was only trying to help, and you've turned this into a war. I didn't start this, I said firmly, Lily sleeping peacefully in her bassinet beside me. But I will protect myself and our daughter. That evening, I installed the security cameras I'd ordered through Megan to monitor the entrances to our home. I wasn't taking any chances with new keys somehow being made. My first night truly alone with Lily was both terrifying and empowering. Every noise made me jump, afraid that Jason or Grace might try to force their way in. But it was also the first peaceful night I'd had since bringing my daughter home. I fed her, changed her, soothed her, and made all decisions without criticism or interference. By morning, I felt stronger than I had in months. This wasn't the maternity leave I had imagined, but I was reclaiming my role as Lily's mother and finding my voice again. The day after changing the locks, Jason returned alone. His initial anger had transformed into a cold calculation. We need to talk, he said when I let him in. This situation is untenable. I agree, I replied calmly. That's why I've scheduled an appointment with a marriage counselor for us next week. If you want to be part of this family, we need professional help establishing boundaries. Jason's expression flickered between surprise and annoyance. He clearly hadn't expected me to take charge of the situation. And what about Mom? She's devastated. Grace is welcome to visit during agreed-upon times, I said firmly. But she will never live here again, and she will respect my role as Lily's mother. Jason spent an hour with Lily before leaving, his demeanor subdued. I suspected he was reporting back to Grace, but I no longer cared. The power dynamic had shifted. 2 days later, while I was nursing Lily in the living room, I heard someone trying a key in the front door. Through the security camera app on my phone, I saw Grace attempting to enter with what appeared to be a new key. When her repeated attempts failed, she began ringing the doorbell and knocking. I didn't answer. Eventually, she left a package on the porch and departed. Inside was a onesie for Lily with Grandma's Girl emblazoned across it, and a note suggesting I was keeping her from her rights as a grandmother. After the third such unannounced visit attempt, I called the police. They spoke with Grace, explaining that she had no legal right to enter my home without permission. Though they couldn't prevent her from coming to the door, the official intervention seemed to make an impression. Meanwhile, I consulted with Megan's lawyer cousin about my options. He advised documenting everything and considering a formal separation agreement that would address custody and finances. Based on what you've told me, he said during our consultation, you have a strong case for primary custody given Jason's behavior during your labor and the postpartum period. The first scheduled counseling session was tense. Jason arrived late and immediately claimed I had lost perspective due to hormones. Postpartum women often become paranoid. He informed the therapist. My mother was only trying to help, and Sam went to extreme measures. The therapist, a compassionate but firm older woman, listened to both sides before addressing Jason directly. Regardless of intentions, your wife felt her boundaries were being violated during an extremely vulnerable time. That's a reality we need to address, not dismiss. Though Jason was resistant initially, he agreed to continue counseling. I suspect he believed it would help his case if we ended up in a custody battle. During this period, I established a routine with Lily. He remarked genuine emotion in his voice. She is, I agreed. She's starting to focus on faces more. She knows who her parents are. Something in my words seemed to reach him. I missed her birth, he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. I'll never get that moment back. No, I confirmed. You won't. The first joint counseling session revealed the extent of Grace's manipulation. With the therapist's skilled questioning, Jason admitted his mother had been telling him I wasn't bonding properly with Lily. Mom said she could tell Sam didn't have maternal instincts, he confessed. She convinced me Lily would be better off with her taking the lead. And what do you think now? The therapist asked. Jason glanced at me, then down at his hands. I don't know. Mom has always been right about everything. But Sam seems different now. Stronger. I am stronger, I said. Because I'm fighting for my daughter. Grace's attempts to undermine me reached new levels when she filed a report with Family Services, claiming I was suffering from severe postpartum depression and neglecting Lily. The caseworker who visited seemed almost apologetic after observing our clean home, well-fed baby, and my organized care routine. We get these types of calls in family disputes, she explained. Based on what I'm seeing, there are no concerns here. The false report backfired on Grace. When Jason learned what she'd done, something finally shifted in him. That was too far. We established a tenuous co-parenting arrangement. Jason moved into an apartment nearby and had regular visits with Lily, gradually increasing to overnight stays as she grew older and weaned from breastfeeding. Grace was limited to supervised visits after a professional evaluation recommended no unsupervised contact given her boundary issues. She complied, though bitterly, likely realizing it was the only way she would see her granddaughter. As Lily passed her 6-month milestone, I found myself settling into a new normal. My return to work was supported by a wonderful daycare provider who respected my parenting decisions. Weekend handoffs with Jason became routine rather than dreaded. Most importantly, I rediscovered the joy of motherhood without constant criticism and undermining. Lily was thriving. A happy, secure baby who lit up when she saw either of her parents. Jason and I continued counseling both together and separately. While our marriage remained in limbo, our ability to communicate improved dramatically once Grace's influence was reduced. I don't know if we can fix what happened, Jason admitted during a particularly honest session. But I want to be a good father to Lily. That's what matters most, I agreed. She deserves parents who respect each other, even if we can't be together. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I missed. Jason's inability to make decisions without his mother's input. Grace's subtle criticism disguised as help. The gradual isolation from my support system. Had I recognized these earlier, perhaps things would have turned out differently. But regret serves no purpose now. Instead, I focus on the strength I found when it mattered most. The courage to protect my daughter and myself from a toxic situation. The journey continues, with uncertainties about whether Jason and I can rebuild enough trust for a romantic relationship. For now, we focus on being the best co-parents we can be. establishing clear boundaries that ensure Lily grows up in healthy environments with both parents. As for Grace, she remains a complex figure in our lives, someone who will always be Lily's grandmother, but who must earn the privilege of being involved through respectful behavior. The most important lesson I've learned is the value of trusting my instincts and setting firm boundaries. No one has the right to sideline you in your own life or parenthood journey. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is change the locks, both literally and figuratively, on those who threaten your peace and well-being. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members, especially in-laws? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and healing. Remember that protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's necessary for you and those who truly depend on you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in your own.